Welcome into TYT Indisputable. It is Adrienne Lawrence and I am filling in for Dr. Rashad Ritchie, and we have some incredible news for you today. And we also have an amazing co-host guest today. We're talking about Kyla Frank, that's UN-PAC National Student Organizing Manager. We are excited to have you here, Kyla.
Thank you, excited to be here.
Yeah, so first let's turn to some news that is less exciting, although somewhat expected based on what we've seen so far. Turning to Kentucky. The lone Kentucky police officer who was charged in connection with the botched police raid that killed 26-year-old Breonna Taylor as she slept in her own home in March 2020. Well, he has been acquitted of all charges. Brett Hankison, a now former Louisville detective, let's put up his picture here. Yes, he had been fired for shooting blindly during the raid that killed Taylor. And when asked during the trial if he did anything wrong at all, well, Hankison said absolutely not. Let's turn to what the AP has to say. So Hankison, 45, has been charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing through sliding glass side doors and a window of Taylor's apartment during the raid. Multiple bullets pierced the wall of a neighboring apartment, and prosecutors said Hankison endangered the lives of a pregnant woman, her young child, and her boyfriend who lived there. Hankison's attorneys never contested the ballistic evidence, but said he fired 10 bullets because he thought his fellow officers were being executed. One of those officers, Sergeant John Mattingly, was hit in the leg by a bullet from a handgun fired by Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who said he thought intruders were breaking in. And apparently the jury here sided with Hankison, believing essentially that he thought his fellow officers were under siege. And this is essentially what we know about the deliberations that just went down yesterday. The panel of 8 men and 4 women delivered its verdict for Brett Hankison about 3 hours after it took the case, following closing arguments from prosecution and defense attorneys. That's right, just 3 hours of deliberation. That really makes you think whether they fully considered the evidence before them. But also bear in mind that none of the officers involved in killing Taylor were actually charged with her death. Also, Hankison did not fire any of these bullets that killed Taylor, but with his acquittal, essentially what we know is that this likely closes the door for prosecuting the officers involved in the raid at the state level, because this acquittal here was for state charges. There is an ongoing federal investigation right now by DOJ looking into whether this botched raid was a possible civil rights violation when it comes to Taylor's rights, and also whether the police department there in Louisville has bigger problems. That entire department is under investigation by the feds right now. But still, this acquittal here, it seems to leave very little hope for Taylor's loved ones. Let's look at what Taylor's mother did in response to the verdict. So Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, and a group of friends and family, they left quickly without commenting after the verdict. Hankison did not appear outside the courtroom after the verdict was read, but his attorney, Stuart Matthews, said that he and Hankison were thrilled and asked what might have swayed the jury. Well, Matthews replied, I think it was absolutely the fact that he was doing his job as a police officer. Doing his job indeed by spraying bullets into homes, knowing there were people living there beyond just the individual that he was going there to execute the warrant for. Yeah, so we have to remember though that this case, it didn't center Taylor at all. And with the prosecution's presentation of the evidence, we got to see that. Essentially what we know is that prosecutors stressed in opening statements that the case wasn't about Taylor's death or the police decision that led to the raid. Jurors were shown a single image of her body, barely discernible at the end of the hallway. Taylor had been settling down for bed when officers arrived at her door. She was shot multiple times in her hallway, and she in fact died at the scene. Let's go ahead and take a look at these men who did kill Taylor, the ones whose bullets were responsible for her death. We have Mattingly's pictured on the right and Officer Miles Cosgrove on the left. Now, neither of these men testified at Hankison's trial, essentially pleading the Fifth Amendment in light of the ongoing FBI civil rights investigation. But we have to ask ourselves, really, was this verdict shocking? And for a lot of people there in Louisville, it was not shocking at all because we have not seen justice for Breonna Taylor, and why we would think it would show up now is beyond us. Let's go ahead and see what the locals said. So Siddiqui Reynolds, president and CEO of the Louisville Urban League, said the verdict didn't surprise her. Black residents of the city, she explained, had already been experiencing a certain amount of frustration because no officer had been charged for Taylor's death. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher said the verdict added to the frustration and anger of many over the inability to find more accountability for the tragic events of March 13th, 2020. Indeed, it seems that there is no accountability, especially when it comes to these officers. Kyla.
My heart and condolences go out to Breonna Taylor's family and the state-sanctioned suffering they had to endure. And like you said before, there are no systems in place to hold people like these cops accountable. They continue to turn a blind eye to the misconduct and criminal behavior in these institutions and therefore endorse this violence. Like you said before, he said, I think it was absolutely the fact that he was doing his job as a police officer, killing people, shooting into their houses. This isn't a system that can be reformed. And why? Because even with the ban for no-knock warrants that was signed by Kentucky Governor Beshear, there still permits no-knock warrants in the case of whether the person is going to be convicted for a violent offense or if the cops think their lives are in danger. And we know that cops lie and abuse their power all the time. And so this isn't a reform, it's a timer until we have another unfortunate and devastating case like Breonna Taylor's. And unfortunately, the citizens of that city will not be surprised when it happens.
Yes, and I think that a lot of us out there, we continue to see instances where justice is essentially evaded. And the thing that really resonates with me is the fact that we have Black women being murdered by police. We have Black women who suddenly are up and dying, like Sandra Bland. And there is not that full investigation and that prosecution for these lives. And we are seeing somewhat of a change, which is good when it comes to Black men who die at the hands of law enforcement. But at the same time, what about Black women? The fact is that Black women continue to be the most disrespected members of society, and the thought that our lives aren't worth essentially warranting getting justice for the taking of our lives, it continues to be echoed every day when we don't have justice for Breonna Taylor, when we don't have justice or any kind of semblance of justice for Sandra Bland, when there is no change whatsoever. And we see this play out in verdicts like this when it wasn't even directly about Breonna Taylor's life, but even this negligent behavior by this officer, it can't even be remedied with a verdict that warrants essentially punishment for this behavior. Any closing words, Kyla?
It's just, again, like you said before, really hard to be a Black woman in America, knowing that there are no systems to protect us, to protect the ones that we've lost, and to protect all the women who will come after us. And I really hope that this country really takes a long, hard look at this case and does something different.
Yeah, we will see. It is in DOJ's hands now, and let's hope that justice is done at the end of the day. But hey, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not. And also, when it comes to justice, we can go ahead and look at another situation with a dangerous cop. You remember that former Colorado officer essentially shown on body cam footage violently arresting and injuring that 73-year-old woman with dementia, and then essentially later joking about it. If you don't remember, let's go ahead and play that video to jog your memory.
Ma'am, police, stop. You want to stop? Lights on, siren, stop. You just left Walmart. Do you need to be arrested right now? No. Okay, let's stop. Come on.
I'm going home.
No, on the ground. Stay on the ground.
I'm going home.
On the ground. On the ground.
I'm going home.
Stop.
I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home.
Are you?
I'm going home.
No, you're not.
How do you think that went?
What? That went crazy.
You do?
Did you know? Did you hear a pop? When I had a mixed car when we first got there, and I was like, I'm gonna play. I was pushing her. I was like, oh no. That's the first time I got music. I was very excited. I was like, I was super excited. I was like, I'm fine. I can handle it. I mean, y'all. So, I was like, all right, let's wrestle, girl. Let's wrestle. Right on the ground, all that stuff. Got her cuffed up.
Stand up, or I'm gonna hold you.
This is great.
I hate it.
I love it.
I hate it.
The officer that tackled that now 75-year-old woman with dementia, who was approximately 100 pounds, that was Officer Austin Hopp. He pushed that woman to the ground, broke her arm, joked about it afterward, the sound of her injury. That's what he was doing with his friends. Well, essentially, he was facing a mandatory sentence of 10 to 30 years. And of course, he now got a sweetheart deal, dropping it from 2 to 8 years. That's right. He did resign from the Loveland Police Department after a brief investigation into his case. But you know what? Let's talk a little bit about how this sweetheart deal played out. So what we do know is that Hopp was initially charged with assault, attempting to influence a public servant, and official misconduct. After Wednesday's deposition, Austin Hopp now faces up to 8 years in prison when he's sentenced in May for second-degree assault, although the judge had the discretion to sentence him to probation or a halfway house. He faced a mandatory prison sentence between 10 and 32 years under the original, more serious assault count he was charged with. Now, Garner's daughter-in-law, Shannon Stewart, she spoke during the court Wednesday on behalf of the family and said that when they first met with prosecutors last May, they felt the charges were appropriate. This is at the heightened level. And they had one request, which is no plea deal. I'm really disappointed that the district attorney would offer a plea, said John Stewart, who is Garner's son, last week. Now, caught off guard, shocked, disappointed, definitely. In court, Shannon Stewart said that they felt the deals were typically offered if there wasn't enough evidence, which the family said was overwhelming in this case. Prosecutors countered by saying that they were not at all concerned about their ability to prove the case, and instead the decision was based on multiple factors and still provided accountability, although with less severe sentencing. Now, Hopp had also been charged with attempting to influence a public servant, a felony, and official misconduct, a misdemeanor. Those charges were not included in the plea deal. This really sounds like he got off easy, or at least is going to definitely get off very easy here, despite the fact that we saw what he did was completely out of line, unnecessary, and violated that woman's rights in every respect of the word. Kyla.
Absolutely disgusting and terrible behavior that should make any fund and shield police. And let me just repeat the damage and harm to dementia. They scratched and dislocated her shoulder. She had a bloody nose, contusions on her knees, and a mental health deterioration. I ask everyone again, is that a system that you want to support? And it also just shows what kind of crime that this country takes seriously. When we see crime punished in this country, they always want to give the maximum sentences to show an example. But they don't do that with the police officers who time and time again do criminal activity that harm and even kill people in this country. It's a shame, and I'm very disappointed at the judge and the DA for the decisions that they made.
Absolutely, that woman was clearly struggling from something that is completely obvious in her demeanor. Also, everyone knew in that community that there was an adult living facility for individuals who have certain issues and disabilities and struggles. And so the fact that that officer would have approached this woman the way he did, it really shows that he abused his power here. And then also seeing him try to essentially manipulate the system and now to be the beneficiary of a plea deal. It really speaks to how broken our system is. And it really does tell us, as you noted, Kyla, essentially who really gets the punishment and who gets the breaks here. And when we're also looking at things when it comes to punishment and breaks, it's definitely at a lighter level, but I think that there are some young minds out there who will be feeling it. So over in Berkeley, a number of young accomplished individuals, well, they're gonna be extremely disappointed this spring because essentially UC Berkeley is going to have to withdraw a number of students, gonna have to remove their acceptances, all because of a number of wealthy Karens who filed a lawsuit. And as a result, UC Berkeley ended up losing its appeal before the California Supreme Court. Let's go ahead and dive into that case. So the decision is the result of a protracted legal battle between residents of Berkeley and the university that has played out over the last few years. And a move that the Atlantic has deemed the apotheosis of NIMBYism, which is not in my backyard. A neighborhood group called Save Berkeley's Neighborhood filed a lawsuit challenging the university's plan to build new housing and academic space for Berkeley faculty and graduate students. An argument, Save Berkeley's Neighborhoods invoke the California Environmental Quality Act. That's a law often used by homeowners to block new housing and homeless shelters, and ironically, stem developments that would help the state reduce its carbon footprint. Now, it's essentially reported that the Berkeley homeowner who really got this thing started in terms of the lawsuit actually spends half of his time living in New Zealand and not in the Berkeley area. And of course, he ends up using this California environmental law that was passed by Ronald Reagan, despite the fact that it's clear that there's no real environmental issue here that is within the framework of the law. So essentially found that loophole. But it was essentially stated initially that Berkeley would have to bounce some 5,000 students from enrollment potentially. But fortunately now Berkeley has found other ways to make it work. So essentially what we know is that to soften the blow of the enrollment freeze, UC Berkeley said at least 1,500 undergrads will be offered one of two options. One group will be asked to study as online students in the fall and will then be allowed to attend in person in January 2023. And a second group will be offered deferred enrollment to begin attending in person in January 2023. And Save Berkeley's Neighborhood, well, they said on Thursday that while it was pleased that the state Supreme Court had maintained enforcement of the enrollment freeze, we'd like to assure deserving California high school students that we are as disappointed as they are that UC has tried to use them as pawns in UC's attempt to avoid mitigating the impacts from the massive enrollment increases over the past few years. Indeed, that this is an issue that was essentially sparked in part, also Berkeley is somewhat to blame. And so let's talk about what that looks like. So Phil Bockavoy, that's the group's president, they said that since 2005, UC Berkeley's admitted 14,000 students, but provided only 1,600 beds. So essentially, he said this has prompted students to seek housing in Berkeley's neighborhoods where they've been moved into apartments that were once rent controlled, displacing low income and middle income residents. He said the housing shortage has created a massive amount of homelessness in Berkeley. And the resident group said that it was trying to avoid a housing crisis like the one at UC Santa Barbara, where students have had to sleep in cars and hotels. And the thing that this really kind of hits me is the fact is that you know who is really affected the most by this, who can't just go up and afford housing in the very wealthy and expensive areas in Berkeley? Generally, they are marginalized students and students who are brown and black from different backgrounds. And so as a result, it was these individuals who found themselves living in various places in the Berkeley area as a result of this housing shortage. But again, now Berkeley is going to make some kind of accommodation as opposed to simply kicking those students out of school. Kyla.
I also want to give a nuanced response to this because I haven't seen much coverage on how students have been feeling about this decision, and I want to give a voice to that. One of my friends and colleagues, Ethan Wegerstein, who's a student at UC Davis and a member of the student government, have spoke at length about this. First and foremost, students are, of course, frustrated at these NIMBYs who are taking advantage of well-meaning environmental laws to push their own agendas. It is fueled by greed and entitlement. Students are also frustrated with the universities of California because if they are serious about providing quality education, that includes ensuring students have access to affordable housing. This has been an issue for decades, and if they haven't addressed this, and if they had addressed this before, we wouldn't see a ruling like this today of these NIMBYs taking advantage of these laws, impacting, of course, like you said before, students of color, Black and brown students. And so this ruling has a potential to impact thousands of students in California and across the country. And I hope this is a wake-up call for all college administrators everywhere that affordable housing is a necessary component in education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that voice, because we do need to hear it. And as someone who was a member of the UC CSU system here in California, I can tell you it's essentially one of these West Coast Ivies. It's a way that you can afford going to school in this California state school system. And that is opportunity there. But the fact is, as Kyla has pointed out, if you don't provide housing, then how is a student going to excel in their studies if they're worried about where they're going to lay their head? You can't necessarily just be taking money from students and not be providing them with opportunities to also live, because we also do know, despite the fact that this is a state school system, it still enjoys the revenue source that is the education college system. So we definitely need these administrators to step up. And also, as Kyla mentioned, we have to hold accountable these NIMBYs and individuals who essentially are just trying to keep Black and brown people out of their neighborhoods and are willing to use any kind of state law or resources available to make that happen. We'll be back very soon.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 20 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively, what do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me, or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted.
Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's fantastic. It's a story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
It's Adrienne Lawrence for TYT Indisputable, filling in for Dr. Ritchie. And I need to know, are you guys watching the watch list? Because you should be. That's with JR Jackson. It's live weekdays, 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific. Find out what stories you should be paying attention to in news, politics, culture, current events, sports, and more. This is a 10-week series, so go ahead and show some love for JR. Hit it up, youtube.com/watchlistTYT and facebook.com/watchlistTYT. Also, Aspiration has a first ever credit card that gives users the ability to eliminate their carbon footprint. Each time the card swipe, Aspiration's goals, reforestation partners with will plant a tree. That's a good thing, I can dig it. Go to tyt.com/0. Also, there's a new podcast coming to TYT on Monday, March 7th. That's right, here are a few clues. This person has been a guest on Indisputable, and her show features other progressive comedians, experts, and activists. Do you think you know who it is? Please do let us know in the comments. Also coming up, it's Ben Carollo's brain is out of this world. So make sure to join her today on Galaxy Brain as she talks through important stories of the day. Tune in to twitch.tv/TYT after Indisputable at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. So many great things going on. Also, gosh, let's hear what you all have to say. I like this. Oh yeah, so as far as the ex-cop who was cleared in the shooting during Breonna Taylor's raid, let's see, this is Beer Dragon says doing his job as a badge murderer. Yeah, there, fixed it for him. There you go. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, he thought, didn't know. He fired 10 bullets because of what he thought, but couldn't confirm. How many times have we seen cops shoot first, ask questions later? That's a really good question. Yeah. All right, so about the cop who broke the arm of the dementia patient, Greyhound Dragon says, what about the other cops who were laughing and rewatching the video and fist bumping? Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I would like to think they are just as responsible for the nonsense as he is. Exactly. Cray Souffle, what garbage bags with badges? Imploded Brainy, when a cop or any public servant has committed a criminal act, they should be held to higher standards and get stiffer sentences than civilians. I couldn't agree more. It's like you're the one who's supposed to be enforcing the law. You have a higher obligation. So yes, agreed. Oh, all right, so also about that ex-cop who was cleared, YouTube super chat, James Don says, shake my head. They charged the person who missed her shake my head. Think about it. Yep, in terms of the one who missed hitting Breonna Taylor. Yeah, and Sweet Peas, thanks for the $10 contribution. The only thing police seem to be good at is getting it wrong. So if that's the job description, he was only just doing his job. Yeah, and the cop who broke the arm on YouTube super chat, Tracy Ravenhawk said, broke her arm? Bad Brad, neither one of them has enough common sense to see that something could be wrong. Yeah, it's good point. And UC Berkeley freezing enrollment, well, let's see, on and on it goes, AKA Shade Dragon. I've been a student sleeping outside before. That's right, yeah. And these colleges do this on purpose, said Prince of Judah 79, good point. Mitchell Evans, this is nuts. Don't enroll students unless you have housing to provide. Yeah, but they'll take our money. Twitch on the cop that was cleared for shooting Breonna Taylor said just because he thought they were under siege doesn't mean you fire indiscriminately into an apartment. He put his fellow officers in as much danger as the people living there. I've never been more disappointed to be from Kentucky. That is an excellent observation. The fact is he could have killed his fellow officers. Yeah, friendly fire. And then Agnostic Sister says, explain to me exactly how he is doing his job by blindly firing bullets at a residence. Really good points. You guys are making excellent observations. The fact is we have a problem. And also so do Karens. Let's go ahead and go to our Karen.
You want to call the police on him for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off. I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
She did not change her clothes.
She was horrified. The look on her face when she looked at me.
Don't tell me how my daughter was. My daughter was completely fine. She said, "Can I just change right here?"
Do you think that having your child get down to changing clothes in public is okay for your child? I happen to think it is horrible.
She was in leggings. Do you know what leggings are? Do you know what leggings are?
All right, ma'am.
You work here. Do you know what leggings are?
Are you stupid? Why do you act stupid?
Act stupid.
You are acting stupid.
You're talking to your employees like my daughter was back there
naked.
No,
she
was
naked,
not.
But she
was
get
in leggings
changing clothes.
She was in leggings and a sweater.
Not appropriate.
She tried on a pair of pants over her pants.
Not appropriate.
That is appropriate.
Not appropriate.
How is that not appropriate?
Have you seen the people that shop in this store? The skeezy men that shop in this store?
I don't care.
The skeezy women?
She was in leggings and a sweater.
Then you're exposing your child to
I wasn't exposing my child to anything.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about my parenting.
Yeah.
I was not exposing my.
That was That was not
it
a good call.
absolutely is not.
Not
I am
a good
an incredible
call.
parent. I don't even
Not
care.
a good call.
Your opinion means nothing.
Not a good
I'm
call.
just telling you.
If my
she was
opinion
not
means
back
nothing,
there
why are you
because
standing
you're
in front of me
talking to
yelling
all
at
your
me?
employees about it. I watched you.
I do teach them how to handle
she was not
situations.
naked. She was in leggings.
Shut
up here.
I don't need you yelling.
I will be calling corporate.
I don't need you yelling.
I will be calling corporate.
And I will let them know that you had your daughter changing her clothes on the.
All right, so yeah, these people is really something special. So that was a Burlington Coat Factory employee. Yeah, that's the Karen who essentially gave this mother a hard time for essentially allowing her daughter to try on a pair of pants over her leggings. Yeah, I wear leggings regularly. They're nice, they're comfortable, they're easy, and they are pants. And so to have this young lady essentially make it easy on herself by just pulling some pants to try on over her leggings, it seemed very, efficient, but apparently it was something that was inappropriate for this employee, Karen. Kyla, what are your thoughts?
Well, first, we usually see these stories from the other side, from this perspective of workers, but I guess this Karen has some time today. There definitely needs to be a standard for how we interact and treat our service workers with patience and respect. But that standard should be a two-way street, and Miss Karen was totally out of line. I hope that mother calls corporate. I hope that Karen is fired for the way that she not only talked to that woman, but just overall treated her. And hopefully she learns her lessons and learns to treat people with a little bit more respect.
Absolutely. Like this was a situation where it's like, of course, yeah, I would call corporate too. Are you out your mind? Number one, you're gonna come at my kid for trying on clothes, and this thought that her leggings in some way make her sexually suggestive to the men in the store. No, the issue is with the men. If they're gonna look at this girl and all of a sudden become aroused, that's a them issue. That's not a her issue. And so it's like, I think it's interesting when people try to tell other people how to parent, but also when they just act a fool. And I really hope that this Burlington employee was checked 1 or 2 times for trying to parent that girl's mother. No. Nope. And there are other people out there who do need some parenting, one particularly in Florida. Essentially, the Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, made claims on Thursday that masks didn't save lives during the COVID-19 pandemic and criticized doctors who recommended or mandated wearing masks. Watch this.
And it's still happening, where people are still holding up the illusion that these things save lives. These things are not saving lives. What saves lives, frankly, is freedom to speak and freedom to find truth. What saves lives is immunity, you know?
Yeah. Immunity, that's cute. Anyway, so essentially following that statement, Ladapo went on to criticize the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for using what he called lower quality studies for its data. He then inferred doctors and other researchers who found the usefulness of masks must have been taken over by zombies or something. Ladapo didn't endorse or mention vaccines when he then spoke of what saves lives during the pandemic. Interestingly enough, as we're seeing Ladapo attack masks just after Ron Desantis, the governor there in Florida, told those young people during that press conference to essentially take off their masks. So we can assume this is a nice little PR angle. But in terms of the reliable research, so Ladapo claims that studies have found no benefit to masks, that they've been essentially proven wrong in repeated studies, including ones by the CDC, proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States, Stanford University, Yale, University of Cincinnati, British Medical Journey, University of Central Florida, so on and so forth. Apparently, they're the ones who got it wrong, and Ladapo knows it all. Well, members of the Committee to Protect Healthcare took aim at what they called disinformation from the Florida Surgeon General. Governor Ron DeSantis and his administration continue to wage an unnecessary war on information that can save lives. And every Floridian should be deeply concerned about the governor's refusal to protect health by applying evidence-based medicine. The goal of every physician should be to protect the lay public from life-threatening coronavirus infection by providing them with accurate, reliable information and encouraging everyone to do the same. All physicians should obey the Hippocratic oath to do no harm, said by Dr. Frederick Southwick, a Gainesville infectious disease specialist. Now, Ladapo has also previously refused to wear a mask in October while meeting with a Florida Democratic lawmaker who had been diagnosed with breast cancer, essentially saying that he didn't consider speaking with a mask on to be quote unquote productive. Kyla, what do you think is most productive?
Honestly, it's baffling to me that I have to speak about stupid people because we have over 100,000 cases per day in the United States. On daily, Florida, 176 Floridans are dying from COVID each and every day. And they have the nerve to say that masks don't work or they're not effective. And honestly, I'm not surprised that this gentleman is coming out saying these type of things when Florida's own governor is chastising and intimidating children for wearing their masks, protecting themselves and their families. Highly disappointing to see that after 2 years of being in this pandemic, that we still have elected leaders acting this way.
Yes, it's because of people like Ladapo and Governor Ron DeSantis, for the reason that our nation is so fractured. The fact is we have these disinformation, misinformation campaigns going on, and we've seen so many people die unnecessarily and needlessly. And to say that masks play no role, get out of here. I can anecdotally speak from my own experience that I haven't even gotten the common cold during this entire pandemic, in part, not only just because I keep my distance from most people now, but also I wear a mask when I engage engage and encounter people. It's like you can't tell me just by virtue of the fact that people aren't as out here slobbering their nastiness because it's blocked by a mask that it's not in any way beneficial for our society amidst a pandemic. But I guess when it comes to Florida, it's a whole different set of rules for their leadership there. And as a result, we should all be the ones following it. Any final words, Kyla?
Just that the conservative contradictions of people like Ron Desantis and other anti-vaxxers really show us who they are and what they believe, which is absolutely nothing. The whole anti-vax movement was about freedom of choice, quote unquote. That's ironic in of itself. But I just don't understand that DeSantis would use his position to continue to push out misinformation that, again, results in people losing their lives.
Yep, very well said. All right, let's go ahead and go to break. Stick and stay.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
Our TYT audience has been building this show and this network with us for 20 years. Now we're expanding and connecting our audience around the world in even more exciting and powerful ways. Look, I don't want you to miss another petition, poll, community conversation, or TYT segment. Connect with informed, passionate, and compassionate progressives, and even new progressives. They're joining our movement every day. This is going to be amazing when we work together. So our community members are learning together, they're building lifelong relationships, and even politically organizing together. Here's what Power Slave Wolf has to say as they begin interacting with our community after making TYT their #1 trusted news source. Quote, I've been a TYT viewer since the Obama years and have since found them to be a far more trustworthy news source than most TV news outlets. Away from viewing TYT, I'm a musician, electric bass guitar, sim racer, satire enthusiast, and rollerblader, the latter being my main means of intense exercise. TYT, my local news, none of the stations in my area are Sinclair owned as far as I know, and comedy style news shows are my trusted news sources. The former and the latter both having something in common in that both have something that TV news sorely lacks, a very low tolerance for BS. So sign up for free at tyt.com/community. We're making it easier to connect, stay informed, and even take action.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
Welcome back to Indisputable. It's Adrienne Lawrence. Let's see what y'all got to say out there on the web. So, TYT members at TYT.com, Mickey the Silver-Haired Dragon, as far as that Karen goes, says, if I'm understanding the issue, I believe that the mother was in the right. If the girl was wearing leggings and a sweater, then she was not exposing herself. People wearing leggings all the time, and there's nothing wrong with her. Couldn't agree more. I don't know why that Burlington employee was so invested in thinking that young lady was nude. Also, the YouTube super chat says, what in the mayonnaise is going on? Yeah, that was a good question. Karen on Karen violence by May Money into building and EGGG. Our customers are gross and creepy. Yeah, that's actually a really good observation for that Burlington employee, essentially saying that there were skeezy men around there. Also, the Unicorn Dragon on Twitch says, mind your business? Yeah, for real. Also, Granny Dragon 1, not any difference than trying on shoes with socks on. Good point. That would seem to be it. As far as the Florida Surgeon General on Twitch, Robo Blake says, why do you think they wear masks in surgery rooms? You know what? I know this person is supposed to be an MD, but I think they may have missed a few days in med school. Also, on YouTube super chat, Sandy L says, don't even call him a doctor. He needs his license revoked. He's something. David Hill, thanks for the $9.99 contribution. Says Florida's war on science is unbelievable. It's the Wild West, and I bet their Surgeon General would call for laudanum and hacksaw if he had to do surgery. I love that. That old bringing back of laudanum. Yes, I think that could possibly be it. Oh, lots of problems out there, including one somewhere in Washington at the Supreme Court. So essentially, the court ruled on Thursday that the federal government can block former government contractors from testifying about the torture of a post 9/11 detainee. The decision likely will make it harder for victims to essentially expose secret government misconduct for the future. And this particular individual here is the one who had appealed. Here's his photo. His name is Abu Zabudai. Now, he was the first prisoner held by the CIA to undergo what at the time was euphemistically called enhanced interrogation. Let's go ahead and turn to what Nina Totenberg of NPR said. So essentially during one 20-day period, this man was waterboarded 83 times, 24 hours a day. And during that period, the suspected terrorist was also slammed against walls, put in a coffin-like box for hours at a time to stimulate live burial, and subjected to something the government called rectal rehydration. In the end, the two CIA contractors who supervised Zabudai's interrogation concluded that they had the wrong man. He was not a high-level Al-Qaeda operative, as the CIA had thought. Indeed, that they essentially terrorized this man and they had the wrong person. And I am without a doubt butchering his name, but can you believe this? And so now in trying to get that information, the Supreme Court is essentially saying, no, we are going to block it from public disclosure. But when we talk about public disclosure here, we need to bear in mind that essentially, as Nina Totenberg has written, all of this has been publicly documented by a lengthy Senate Intelligence Committee report, the European Court of Human Rights, widespread press reports, and disclosures by the two CIA contractors who supervised to torture. In fact, the CIA did allow the now former contractors to write and speak extensively and even testify in limited circumstances about the enhanced interrogation program. But when his lawyers subpoenaed them, the US government blocked the move by invoking the so-called state secrets privilege, a doctrine created by the Supreme Court in 1953 that allows the government to shield evidence harmful to national security. In this case, both the Trump and Biden administrations argued that even though the information about the torture programs is widely known, confirming the existence of CIA black sites. Yeah, this is it. In Poland, that essentially would jeopardize the US government's relationship with foreign intelligence services. So the Supreme Court ruled, as the majority said, in 7-2. It was a very fractured opinion, but essentially it had 4 different separate opinions on the majority side and a furious dissent. And I know that you know Sotomayor was likely a part of that dissent. But also we have to bear in mind that the outgoing Justice Breyer wrote the opinion. And so when he wrote the majority decision, he set out narrow grounds for siding with the government. But he added, we do not decide here whether a different request filed by might avoid the pitfalls of this particular case. Indeed, at oral argument, the government refused to say whether it would allow the appellant to now detained at Guantanamo Bay to testify himself about his interrogation. Only Chief Justice Roberts joined Breyer's opinion in its entirety. Justice Clarence Thomas agreed only on the end result and refuted the idea that judges should play any role in reviewing secret material. Kavanaugh and Barrett also filed a separate concurring opinion, and Kagan wrote that she largely agreed with Breyer's analysis. She would not have dismissed the case, but would have allowed the lower court to see if there were other ways of avoiding disclosure of secret material. Now, Gorsuch was pretty pissed. In an angry dissent joined by liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor, he emphasized a long history of the government invoking national security to shroud major abuses. Here, the government really wants to avoid further embarrassment for past misdeeds, Gorsuch concluded. But as embarrassing as these facts may be, there is no state secret here. This court's duty is to the rule of law and the search for truth. We should not let shame obscure our vision. Now, this man at the center of Thursday's case, he has been in custody now for nearly 20 years. Nearly 20 years. And we have to bear in mind that he's just looking for information that's been provided everywhere else to be provided directly from the government itself. Now, since 2006, he's been at the US base at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, and he remains there despite having been cleared for release. There are just 39 prisoners left at Guantanamo, where the price tag is $13 million a year for each prisoner. 20 have been cleared for release, 12 have been charged in 9/11 related cases, and the remainder have not been charged but are considered too dangerous to release. This seems like, it just seems like it makes this look really bad. The fact is that the Supreme Court couldn't even get it together to acknowledge the fact that this information is out there already. It's been provided by many different sources. There have been books written about it. There have been movies on it, but the government is still trying to claim that there are state secrets. Kyla?
I think it's really important to contextualize this case with recent national events. The United States government has taken the moral high ground in the Ukrainian-Russian war and has continually condemned Russia for practices such as the military imperialism and torture of prisoners. Yet these are the same tactics the US continues to take part in and cover up. Hypocrisy aside, it also raises the question of whose torture do they deem acceptable? And no surprise, it's the continued torture and subjugation of Black and brown people. I just want to be clear that both Russia and the United States governments are rife with corruption and federally and internationally approved violence. I condemn both of them for it, and I hope that the victims of each nation will receive justice for their treatment. I hope that the 2 justices who ruled against the trying to cover all this up continue to advocate for changes within our justice system, because again, this is completely deplorable. I am definitely ashamed that our country has taken this stance, and my heart and condolences just go out to that man who was wrongly convicted and tortured.
Yeah, well, not even convicted. He's just being held there and tortured. And the fact that they've identified that he wasn't essentially a spy in any way, and these things that they did to him, that has to change your entire fabric and makeup as an individual. He was tortured for hours and hours upon a day. And the fact that all of the information's out there and it's been provided by numerous sources and is available from numerous sources, yet still the government is arguing, nope, state secrets. And also let's bear in mind that Gorsuch, conservative Gorsuch, is on the side of saying, no, this ain't right. Come on, It's like the moral compass. Where is it when it comes to the court? It really speaks to our level of willingness to conceal our misdeeds and our misconduct when it comes to engaging with individuals who are foreign nationals. It just, wow, it speaks volumes. Also, what speaks volumes is the whole family values narrative from the Republican Party. And we recently saw this blow up earlier this week when a Republican member of Congress decided to end his reelection bid, essentially when he was forced to admit that he had an affair right at the 11th hour of his runoff election. And it wasn't just any affair, bear in mind. This gentleman here, US Representative Van Taylor, a Republican from Plano, Texas, who also happened to be the author of Texas's bathroom bill and has known as a track record of having very, very big anti-LGBTQIA+ stance. Well, he made the stunning announcement on Wednesday, hours after he finished his 5-way primary with 49% of the vote, just missing the cutoff for winning the Republican primary outright. And the day before the primary, well, that conservative outlet Breitbart posted news of Taylor having a months-long affair with this Plano woman, Tanya Joya. And also, there's the thought that he paid her $5,000 to keep it quiet. Well, that ain't enough money for me to keep quiet. It wasn't for her, that's for sure. The 38-year-old said she fell in love with Taylor while working on a re-education program for former extremists, something she knew quite a bit about because Joya, well, she dreamed of being a suicide bomber. She's a former jihadist, but she also abandoned Muslim after being taken to Syria by her Texas Muslim husband, John Georgalis, who said, is said to have been killed in 2017 and allegedly was the head of an Islamic State. Indeed, this woman here, the former jihadist, well, she had that relationship with Van Taylor, who is married, a veteran, and also has 3 daughters. Well, Burma, who commented on the affair, said, how does that differ to how her first husband treated her in terms of her relationship with Taylor? They both manipulated her to get what they wanted, and that's probably being a little unkind to terrorists. He was a teenage ideologue radicalized into fighting for ISIS, whereas Van Taylor is a Harvard-educated US congressman. He is the one who should have known better. Taylor issued an apology for the affair, saying, about a year ago, I made a horrible mistake that has caused deep hurt and pain among those I love in this world. Taylor wrote in an email to supporters, I had an affair, it was wrong, and it was the greatest failure of my life, and I want to apologize for the pain I've caused with my indiscretion, most of all to my wife, Ann, and our 3 daughters. Wow. I guess Taylor had a lapse in judgment for those 9 months that he was sexing this woman. Kyla?
Honestly, again, just another family value Republican showing his smile in public and his behind in private. Honestly, America First should have an asterisk next to it in the case of extramarital affairs, out-of-state abortions, and attending white supremacist events. Truly disgusting behavior on his part, but again, I am not surprised. These people are full of contradictions. They're full of falsities, and yeah, I totally condone his behavior, and I'm glad he dropped out. He definitely does not deserve to sit at any type of elected office.
It's wild to me, number one, that he maintained this affair with this former jihadist, but also that he is, like you said, out in these streets proclaiming family values and talking about people engaging in sexual behavior that he finds to be abominable and completely and totally disgusting. He's out here regulating people, impacting trans youth and trans lives with this horrid bathroom bill. And behind closed doors, he is running amok. And the thought also of paying this woman $5,000, apparently helping her with her credit card bill. Come on, what's that gonna pay for her silence? $5,000, yeah, right, nobody got time for that. There's a reason that this woman ended up sharing the information she did with Breitbart, because I'm sure they paid her more.
I just don't understand some of these men. If you're gonna do some dirt, at least have the money to pay for it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's like, give somebody some real cash, because this dude, Taylor, he got what he paid for, which was like a few months of silence until a better bidder came along. It's just, and I am also shocked that he did resign without being pushed out. Because he got, as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, 49% of the vote, and he needed 50% to get that Republican nomination. So he was right there, and his district really was pushing for him. And just for this information to come out now, of course, the day before his primary, and then he steps down so quickly. Wow, it makes me think that there's probably more information out there about him, given how these Republicans are willing to stay in office despite the worst of worst charges against them, or even just pending accusations against them.
Well,
Any last words, Kyla?
I hope he felt that it was all worth it.
I'm sure he'll find something, that's for sure. Well, good luck to him and good luck to the GOP. And we will be back in just a few minutes.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
We'll see. Poor
Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it, we will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always changed this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT Network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Adrienne Lawrence filling in for Dr. Richie. And those were our stories of the day. We hope you enjoyed them. We definitely enjoyed having Kyla Frank, Unpack National Student Organizing Manager. Thanks so much for joining us, Kyla. Can you tell the viewers where they can find you and find more information about you?
Most definitely, and thank you so much for having me on again. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at MISSLA_K1. That's Misslaw_K1. You can also follow my organization Unpack on Instagram, UN_PAC. On Twitter, it's Let's Unpack, LETSUNPAC. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I'm excited to be continuing to work with you, especially as you join us now as a contributor on Rebel HQ. So you all can definitely watch for Kyla there. You can also check me out with my segment Overruled. I'm gonna bring you some amazing stories this afternoon, by the way. You just wait and see. And now, definitely stay with us because you're gonna wanna watch this bullpen replay. It's Andrew Donaldson, commentator for Young Voices, talking about the upcoming midterm elections with Dr. Richie. Enjoy and have a great weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. He's back. In the bullpen today, we have Andrew Donaldson. Andrew Donaldson is a conservative radio host and commentator with Young Voices. He is the managing editor of Ordinary Times magazine and a widely published writer, smart guy, decent fellow. Good to have you.
Quite the intro. Thank you very much, sir. Great to be back talking to you again.
Absolutely, man. All right, we're gonna have fun with this one. So, Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, under criminal investigation, obviously still for sex trafficking an underage girl, at least one, maybe more. He said during a press conference that Donald Trump and him had a conversation about Trump becoming Speaker of the House. I don't want to presume what you know, believe about that topic, so I will give you an opportunity to express your sentiment.
Well, first of all, if Matt Gaetz told me 2 + 2 was 4, I'd check the source material just to confirm it. But just for the sake of the conversation, let's take him at his word on this. Let's use an old phrase we've been using a lot during the Trump era. Do we take this literally? Do we take it seriously, or neither? Let's take the literal part first. I don't think this is happening. Yes, there's machinations where you could make somebody the Speaker of the House. That would take a lot of votes. That would take a lot of people who have spent their whole lives trying to become Speaker of the House, taking a sidestep to that. And I don't think Donald Trump really wants to do that job and that work anyway, because he clearly has a plan for 2024, if not running for office himself, which a lot of people think he does. He's certainly building a fundraising mechanism that being Speaker of the House would get in the way of. So let's just say that's not going to be literal. So do we take it seriously? Well, the actual part of Trump becoming that isn't probably serious, but what it tells us about what these folks are thinking, we should take very serious. Kevin McCarthy is in a whole heap of trouble. There's this, whatever you want to call this caucus that is very loyal to Donald Trump, doesn't want Kevin McCarthy rising to the speakership. They're being open about it. Marjorie Taylor Greene flat out said it last week, and Gaetz is kind of floating this as well. So what's really going on here is the Republican Party is sensing power. They and a lot of other people think they're going to do very well in 2022. They think they're going to get the House, and what we're seeing now is jockeying position. But when it comes to Matt Gaetz and these folks, they really only have one note, one song, and one tool in the tool bag, and that is to pull out Donald Trump. It's all they can talk about. It's all they can think about. It's all he really has is his political identity, so he has to be the most at it than anybody else. I think that's probably what's really going on here. He's getting lots of great press. You and me are spending time talking about it today. So he's winning as far as that goes. Is it really going to happen? I doubt it. Is it going to move numbers and move fundraising? Probably. Is it putting more and more pressure on Kevin McCarthy, who's in a lot of trouble and is probably in a lot of trouble when we go to do some voting here come January if they get the House? I think that's probably the part you take seriously. There's a lot of moving parts here. This is just one little piece of it.
Yeah, and so I do get tagged a lot about this topic, and people ask the question, is it even possible? Yes, Article 1, Section 2 does not say you have to be a member of Congress. As a matter of fact, we've had people voted on, or they received votes who never served in Congress. Stacey Abrams has received votes to be Speaker, and others. So yeah, it is possible. It's never happened before, but it's possible. I actually agree with you. I think this gives us an idea, a glimpse into their strategy. So what is their strategy? Their strategy is to place personality over policy. That's their strategy. So here's what I believe about conservatives and the Republican Party today. I think you all have been hijacked, or conservatives at large have been hijacked with a very personality-driven agenda, to where policy debates are on the back burner to personality conflicts. So now you have these personality warriors like Matt Gaetz or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Boebert. They're all about the person and personality, not only their personality and their brand, not only the brand of Donald Trump, but then also the personality of how they choose heroes and villains. So to them, Dr. Fauci is a villain, Rittenhouse is a hero. Well, all of that is in the realm of public opinion, but none of that is in the realm of actual legislative policy. So because I believe they are incapable of true legislative prowess, they lean on their strengths, which is to create policy, which is to create personal chaos when they have no policy core. Do you disagree with me on that sentiment?
I don't, and I think the reason why that is because that's how they get power, that's how they get their fundraising base, that's how they get attention. And remember, these are not traditional politicians. These are folks that came up in this movement, in the Trump era. This is all they know how to do. They didn't start at like a local level and work their way up, that sort of thing. This is gonna be interesting to watch the Republican Party. You're seeing some movement away from this. For example, Dan Crenshaw, the representative from Texas, he came out and fired some bombs at the Freedom Caucus and some of these same folks again, because he's a smart guy. He sees that there's a power situation coming up. He understands if the Republicans take power, now this paradigm is going to be shifted, and they're not just throwing bombs at the people in charge. They're going to be in charge. They're going to be the ones responsible for all this stuff, and they know that there's a limited amount that this is going to play when you're in charge and you're in the chair, because in 2 years you're going to have this election all over again, and if you mess it up, the voters are going to punish you for it. So the smart ones are knowing that. And we don't want to broad brush everybody like that, but the people like Gaetz, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Representative Boebert, they are so one note on all this stuff. They're just the example to use of this is not going to do any, this is all they're going to do. They've got nothing else besides this. Any policy they come up with is going to be based on this. And that's why even people who were with Donald Trump, they're going to at some point have to take a step aside from these folks, because they're going to have to be in charge and run the Congress. If you really let Matt Gaetz do what he says, where he's in charge, and the other people he named, like Gosser, who's really, really questionable, let's just be nice about it, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, if they were really in charge, which they're not going to let them be, by the way, you would have a bloodbath electorally 2 years after that. They know this, so watch very carefully. You're starting to see some seams. You'll see some more seams, and if they actually come into power and they have a speaker election, I think this really could be quite an ugly fight.
Now, man, let me say something, brother. And I think you're making a mistake that you all made years ago. When you say that these people would never be in power, it would never happen, they would never allow it. You all were saying the same thing about Donald Trump when about 20 damn Republicans were running. And listen, let's be fair, all right? I'm gonna be very fair to you. You all had some good damn Republicans running for president. You all did. I mean, some quality statesmen, contrary to my political belief and my ideology, but they believed in something. And they would have never treated the institution of the presidency like Donald Trump did, all right? So I want you to be careful about that language. I am really, really interested to know your answer on this. I have a theory about both Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Many people know they have traveled around the country. They're doing fundraisers. They're peas in a pod, you know. But I think Matt Gaetz is playing a game. I think he's gaming everybody. I think he has shifted his politics to be a distraction to his personal issues and his inability to truly engage in policy. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, man, I think she's a true believer, brother. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene really believes this foolishness. What are your thoughts?
I don't want to read minds, because I'm not a mind reader. All I have is the evidence of their actions to judge them on. Marjorie Taylor Greene strikes me as somebody who, we all know somebody like that. She's had money. She's had money, and I'm just going to be blunt here. She's had money that came from her family connections. It's not money that she went out and earned. She's had a sort of, and I know this word gets abused and people roll their eyes, but I think it applies here. She's had a privilege in her lifespan that has narrowed her worldview down to just her. So, true believer, I think it's just stuff that kind of interlocks into the way she sees the world anyway. It's all about her, and that just kind of all fits together like a glove. Gaetz is a really interesting case. Remember, he's a third-generation politician.
Right.
His father and his grandfather were very powerful figures in the state of Florida. He knows how the political game is played. So for him, it's a little harder for me to judge, and I do not care for the man at all. So understand why I'm saying it this way. I'm just analyzing here. There's got to be a measure. He knows how this game's played. He comes from a long line of politicians. He's not a dumb individual. How much of it is true believer and how much of it is branding, I don't know. But it's so combined now. I don't know that it really matters that much because he just wants to be the standard bearer. He calls himself Firebrand proudly. That's probably an appropriate term for him. Does it really matter where the one stops and the other starts because he's playing this role all the time? He's living the gimmick, we would call it, if you were doing pro wrestling. I don't know how much it matters that he doesn't, but yeah, he knows the game. He's playing the game, but he is the game right now, so we should judge him accordingly, and I think that's the fair way to address him.
You know, you have a lot of common sense, and you are okay with it. There are people that have common sense in your party, in your conservative sphere. They don't want to use it. They don't want to show people they have common sense. So they play along. They play along with the big lie. They play along with the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world and the Trump supporting rhetoric. But I want to present this to you, man.
Sure.
Because what are you all going to do right now? Now, and I mean this seriously. Trump only has a hold of about 30% of your base. Like all statistical data says, 28, 32, the highest I saw was 34. Like that's never going to let go 100% Donald Trump. Which means you all still have, conservatives like yourself, you all still are the majority of the party, but you're scared of that 30% because of what they're willing to do to you, how they're willing to vilify you, how they're willing to polarize you. What are y'all gonna do?
I think there's something happening. If you look at 2020 and you look at, for example, the Virginia elections we just had, election participation is going way up. So I think that percentage is going to move around, and I think you're going to have some more burnout with Donald Trump. So some of this may be an attrition type of an issue. I can't speak for everybody, but I know why some of those people do. We already covered it with the Gaetzes and the Marjorie Taylor Greens. They're invested in it. They have a business model attached to it. They're not going to let that go because engagement is money, and those people are the most engaged, so they tend towards that. We've got a long way to go here. This midterm, let's take your favorite state, Georgia. Is Donald Trump's involvement in Georgia going to be a positive or negative? I'd argue it's probably going to be a negative. How's that affect him going down the road? There's a lot of time for Donald Trump to wear out his welcome even more. If he keeps focusing on that engagement while more people get engaged, remember Joe Biden got record numbers and Donald Trump did turn out more voters, but it wasn't as many as Joe Biden turned out. There's more people getting involved in the process now. So that 30% might get even smaller just by attrition over time. I don't think you're going to change people's minds on a lot of things, but I think there just may be a natural evolution away from it. I know that's not the answer a lot of people want because they want people to stand up and say, no, I'm done and walk away. That's not how a lot of people work, though. It's going to be a slower burn, I think. And let's be honest, the people like Gaetz, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Donald Trump himself can do, they wear people out. And if they get more time and more airtime, they may wear out. And I'll take your criticism that we can't say, well, it'll never happen because it happened with Trump. I was wrong on Trump. I'll admit that too, like a lot of folks. But we still got to have some faith in the American people in the long run, no matter what their party stripes are or their priors, to kind of grow a little bit and evolve a little bit. You never want to pigeonhole people and say they can never get any better.
You know, you say that, and I don't have much faith in Republican voters, and let me tell you why. Damn near 70% of Republican voters think it's important what you believe about the election being stolen from Trump. That basically, if you believe that the election was stolen, you're a Republican. You're good. You're good to go. If you don't believe that, we have a problem. That one test that has nothing to do with the value structure, has nothing to do with the policy, has nothing to do with the platform of the Republican Party, but 70% of likely Republican voters say it is important that you believe the election was stolen from Donald Trump. What say you to that?
It's a disconcerting thing because I looked into it. I studied it myself. I found very little, you can find isolated cases, but certainly nothing systemic, certainly nothing that was going to overturn an election of that magnitude. It's just not true. If it was true, I would be saying so because I don't really worry about the right. I worry about getting it right. I don't know how to make other people do that other than I try to convince people as best I can in my own advocacy. I try to partner with people that do the same. I can't change people's minds, and neither can anybody else for that matter. When you have something that's just an abstract fact, this happened, this is how it broke. And when you obviously are going a different way with it, then it's something other than the fact is why you are doing it. Is it an identity thing? Is it a marker thing? Is it, it's almost like a chant at a ball game, really. It's just you're joining in with the crowd sort of thing. I don't know why the individual people do that, but that's the problem with it. You have to at some point just have some personal accountability. Didn't used to be a dirty word in conservative circles. I still try to adhere to it as best I can. Personal accountability for me is I look at it. If it's right or wrong, I say whether it's right or wrong, and then I adjust course accordingly. I hope everybody does that. I can't make them do that, but that's what I'm going to do, and I hope more people will do so.
There was a time, brother, where we would debate good faith, right? Like you and I are doing, we're having a conversation. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. But it's a good faith conversation. It's a good faith debate. Here's what has happened. We're now debating if a fact is true or not. That's what it has devolved into. What are you getting? Are you getting any sense from the conservative movement that more and more people on that side of the aisle are starting to get wise to the chaos that Trump will bring them if he continues to lead the party?
I think so, because even if they win the midterms, if you're gonna win in 2024, you're gonna have to do something with it. Just winning that by itself ain't gonna be enough. Because remember, President Obama did not do well in his first midterm. Reelected comfortably. You can go all through history. This is a historic cycle thing that you're dealing with midterms on top of all the other stuff. Just historically and cyclically, the out-of-party power does really well in a midterm. But that's not good enough once you lead, and then you got 2 more years till the next election. I think that, but let me go deep on something you said a minute ago, though, about why people do this. I think it's what I've started calling avataring. Instead of having their own thoughts and their own principles, they just latch onto somebody and they become their avatar, and then whatever they do, that's what they believe, because it's easier to do that and put all the blame on them and put all the onus on that person. So you're seeing a lot of that. When it comes down to their own power, like we're going to be seeing in Congress, we were talking about, I think you'll start seeing some people peel off because they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, if this just goes to war and destruction for no purpose, you don't have the White House trappings to go along with that. A lot of people might think that price is way too high now, even if it's not an ethical and moral good decision. It might just be a good business decision. People might start peeling off a little bit.
Man, you said something really powerful about the avatar aspect of this. I do gang deprogramming. I've been a gang deprogrammer for years. And what I see, groupthink, psychology, all of these dynamics, the identity of the tribal leader, like all of that can be contextualized in what's happening politically now. You have the same group think ideology. You have this personification of the group leader or tribal leader. You're not able to independently think, and you basically create a belief structure around the command of the person in charge. And it happens in a way that's so organic inside of them that they believe it is actually their belief, when it is not their belief, it is their indoctrination. It's the pattern of indoctrination. I appreciate you, brother, for being on the program. We're gonna have you back. Thank you as always.
Anytime.
All right.
Anytime, sir. I greatly appreciate it.